I'm constantly amazed at how often we see a reporter or a public official or a regular old person, how often they're surprised or indignant or about the consequences of something they had direct involvement in. Something that they were directly involved in ignoring, denying, condoning, excusing, encouraging, or even lying about. And when the inevitable pushback comes, when they throw the big rock in the middle of the pond, and the big old ripples come back to them, they're the first ones to look into the camera and go, "Wow, how did that happen? I'm really surprised at that." Or something like, "Wow, the water rippled on my shoes. I'm very unhappy that whoever threw that rock in the pond got my feet wet." We're constantly seeing this. I saw 2 examples of this in the papers and in the local media today, one in St. Louis, one in Baltimore, of people who are just absolutely oblivious to consequences. Hi, this is Colin Flaherty. Welcome to the Don't Make the Black Kids Angry podcast. Boy, a lot of people are starting to listen to this podcast. We just cranked it up about a month ago, so thanks everybody. And if you're listening to it on your podcast player, great. By the way, if you're listening to it on your player, why don't you go leave a comment on our minds.com channel. Tell everybody else which player you're using and which one you like and how they can do it. And if you're not subscribed to this channel, subscribe to it. That way, that's the easiest way to get it. Anyway, let's get back to the consequences. Wasn't it just a couple years ago that Jewel, anybody remember Jewel? The singer. Boy, she had a very nice voice. Anyway, one of the last songs that I heard from her was a song called "Only Kindness Matters." I mean, that could have been the theme song, the anthem for Democrats and liberals in this country. Because all that matters is for Eric Holder or Barack Obama or Nancy Pelosi or any of their other thousands and thousands of satraps to stick their chin up in the air, pronounce the value of their own virtue, and nobody really cares what happens after that, because only kindness matters, only virtue matters. The only thing that matters is that you recognize, you acknowledge that I'm a very kind, that I'm a very virtuous person, whether I am or not. But all these things have consequences. I think it was Ayn Rand who said we can ignore the consequences of our actions, but we cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring the consequences of our actions. And so we had all this bad business happening in Ferguson/St. Louis, Baltimore, Charlotte, Milwaukee. It's amazing how long that list is, if we kept going, of large-scale episodes of black mob violence in this country. Some so-called political, some not. It's amazing when it happened how many of the reporters were sitting there. They couldn't really make up their mind, could they? How many were saying, on one hand, well, these protests were largely peaceful, Colin. Then the other hand, we'd have the reporter. Sometimes it was the same reporter in the same breath saying, well, this rage is absolutely justified because it's a result of lots of black people unhappy when the cops catch them committing a crime. Well, that's not exactly what they said, but that's the translation. So it's either A, it didn't happen, or B, it's justified. Either way, largely peaceful. The protests were largely peaceful. God, I mean, we heard that every single time. We heard that in Baltimore, heard it in St. Louis, Charlotte, Milwaukee. Largely peaceful, Colin. Isn't it weird? People on national TV tell us something that isn't true, and then they just keep doing it over and over and over. I mean, the consequences of that for their ratings are pretty consequential. But I was actually thinking about the violence itself. People think that violence has no consequences. It just happened, and then we can all go back to whatever the heck we were doing before this large-scale episode of black mob violence over many days hit your city. It's like, oh yeah, now we got that out of our system. We blew off some steam. Now let's go back and attract some jobs so all the kids can get back to work, because we know the only reason they're rioting is because they cannot get jobs. Capiche? Man, when I think of Ferguson, I mean, we're going to talk in a minute how the ripples from that rock being thrown in the middle of the pond are still rippling to this day. But let's just take a little reminder of what the environment was there with this couple of these sound bites.
I said I'm tired of being peaceful and tired of being calm. You know, they've been going to war on us for over 400 years. So, I ain't peaceful. I ain't no protest. I'm violent. Burn this motherfucker out! Burn this bitch down! Give me the money! Give me the money! Burn this bitch down! Burn this bitch down! Burn this bitch down!
I think a lot of people probably remember that last one with the stepdad, Michael Brown's stepdad. It's never clear to me. I guess it's not even important, but for some reason, it's important to me. It's not clear to me whether he was actually the stepdad or he was just Michael Brown's mom's latest squeeze. I mean, is there an actual marriage certificate saying, did he actually get down on his hands, on his knees, on bended knee and go, Mrs. Brown, would you please marry me? I don't know. Maybe he did. If he did, that would be the exception. Anyway, that's kind of a tangent. And so this went on for days and days and days, right? All this incredible level of violence. And I mean, the point of all the violence was, at least nominally, I mean, people said, well, we want that cop, Darren Wilson, we want him in jail. Everybody did everything they could to put that guy in prison. Boy, you had the people locally going, yeah, he's a murderer. We got to kill him. Michael Brown, hands up, don't shoot. A lie. I mean, the district attorney in St. Louis, good Lord, they would have put that guy in the slammer had they had even a tiny glimmer of a conviction. Couldn't do it. State people in the state of Missouri, same thing. It's like, yeah, if we found them, if we found just a tiny, tiny little way into this case, we would have gone in there and busted Officer Darren Wilson for martyring Michael Brown, St. Michael Brown of Ferguson, for no reason whatsoever other than the fact that he was black. But every step along the way, there's always somebody going, listen, we could probably do this, but if it did, we get the wrong judge, it's going to end our legal careers, because judges don't really like it if you bring cases in front of them without any evidence. No, they don't like that one bit. And not every judge is under the sway of the editorial board of the St. Louis papers, who regularly declare that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. And that explains why these cops are going around Ferguson, a suburb of St. Louis, shooting people for no reason whatsoever. So none of that happened. I mean, but the last best hope was the federal government, right? I don't know, 7-8 months later, turns out Eric Holder, the federal government, they were involved in this shooting from the beginning. They sent 3 people to Michael Brown, at least 3 that I know of, to Michael Brown's funeral. The funeral where the minister stood up and said Michael Brown was doing the work of the Lord, spreading the work of Jesus, the word of Jesus. This is before we created the other little mythology about him. I mean, this was at the same time the Department of Justice was sending out people from their so-called their community organizers. When something like this happened, the community organizers used to go into the community, kind of tamp people down instead of rioting. What the idea was, well, if we show you how to do peaceful protest and how to work your way on the local authorities, you won't need to go around burning any towns, right? Kind of weird. I used to kind of have a stopwatch on these riots, whether it was St. Louis, Milwaukee, Baltimore, Charlotte, wherever. And it's always the same. It's like, okay, there's the shooting. There's the couple of local people going, oh yeah, he was killed for no reason whatsoever. Then I can just imagine the people in Washington, D.C., inside the Department of Justice, these community organizers. I could see them having a meeting. I can see them all deciding. I can see them calling the travel agent going, oh yeah, we could be on a plane tomorrow. Yeah, so we'll hit the ground tomorrow, be in our hotel tomorrow night, and we'll be ready to rock, a couple days from now. I mean, it's almost like clockwork. The riots never started until those clowns showed up. I mean, that's exactly what happened in Milwaukee. But despite all the interest of the Department of Justice at the funeral, which was supposed to send these people send signals to each other, right? Sending a bunch of people to the funeral, sending the organizers down there. That was supposed to send a message to prosecutors all over the country that, listen, you have to do whatever you can to get that cop. Even that didn't work. Because the feds, after an 7-8 month investigation, Eric Holder came out to much fanfare, to much anticipation. He had a big press conference in Washington, D.C. Does anybody remember that? Well, he came out and he said, well, hey, if I have this is Colin's translation. We're going to hear from Eric Holder in a minute. If I had my way, we'd string up Officer Darren Wilson right now for shooting Michael Brown for no reason whatsoever, but for some reason we can't get any lawyers and judges to actually agree that's what actually happened. But it doesn't really matter what happened, right? Because only kindness matters, only virtue matters, only me standing up here and saying that matters. Boy, what an unfair world. And so the same guy who'd been telling everybody daily ever since he took the job as Attorney General, Eric Holder, that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism, he had to kind of bail on the whole Michael Brown was martyred for no reason whatsoever. But he pulled the greatest bait and switch in the history of this country. I'm still astonished at this. I'm still astonished that A, he had the nerve to say it, and B, the reporters had the nerve to just write it down, and not one of them looked up from their pad and said, well, that doesn't make any sense, what he's about to say. Because what he said was, he finally figured out the reason why so many people were rioting in Ferguson. He found out the reason why so many people were so damn pissed off in Ferguson and in St. Louis, in particular St. Louis in general. You know why? Turns out it wasn't about Michael Brown after all. No, Michael Brown didn't have anything to do with it. It was all about traffic tickets.
Now, a possible explanation for this discrepancy was uncovered during the course of our second federal investigation, conducted by the Civil Rights Division to determine whether Ferguson police officials have engaged in a widespread pattern or practice of violations of the United States Constitution or federal law. Now, as detailed in what I will call our searing report, and it is searing, also released by the Justice Department today, this investigation found a community that was deeply polarized, a community where deep distrust and hostility often characterized interactions between police and area residents. Now, this deeply alarming statistic points to one of the most pernicious aspects of the conduct that our investigation uncovered, that these policing practices disproportionately harm African American residents. In fact, our review of the evidence found no alternative explanation for the disproportionate impact on African American residents other than implicit and explicit racial bias. No other basis. Between October 2012 and October 2014, despite making up only 67% of the population, African Americans accounted for a little over 85% of all traffic stops by the Ferguson Police Department.
I have never heard anything like that. Ever. Never seen a switch like that. We went from cops are killing people for no damn reason whatsoever, and that's why everybody's pissed off, to cops are writing too many traffic tickets, and that's why people are pissed off? Wow. That's what he calls his searing report. And when he walked out of the room, everybody patted him on the back, told him what a great job he was doing as Attorney General for the cause. You know, this whole traffic ticket thing, I mean, to Eric Holder's, underlying the Eric Holder announcement that traffic tickets are causing black people to riot in Ferguson, underlying that finding is the whole idea that black people and white people must be breaking the traffic laws at the same rates. I mean, you're not actually going to sit here and tell me, are you, Colin, that black people and white people drive differently? Are you, Colin? Colin, do you have the nerve to say that? Because there's not a damn elected official in this country, especially in Ferguson or St. Louis, that'll stand up and say, oh yeah, the only reason why black people get more tickets for more serious things is because they're black. I mean, and nobody's going to stand up and say, yeah, it's because they're breaking the law more often. Boy, they had this question come up out in San Francisco. That's a thing in California now. When you see a thing, these things very, very, very rarely happen because something just spontaneously happened. No, the thing now is that we've criminalizing poor people by making them pay traffic tickets. That's a thing. And we're criminalizing poor people, parentheses, black people, in California by making them pay their traffic tickets. In San Francisco, where there's 6% black people, they found out that 50% of the people who were not showing up for even minor traffic offenses in traffic court were black people. The supervisors of San Francisco, the county supervisors, the city councilmen, same group, they immediately knew why. That somehow this racial disparity was only because one reason only, white racism. They couldn't quite figure out what it was other than the disparity means white racism. I mean, the guys were going, yes, Colin, we have to do better. I mean, why do black people get more traffic tickets? Are cops picking on them? You go to any university in America and there's a professor working on a study going, yes, after doing 37 multivariate linear regressions, we have determined there's a 1% difference in the way cops approach a black people versus the way they approach a white people. And that explains why 50% of black people do not show up for their failure to appear tickets in San Francisco. Everybody pats this guy on the back and says, hey, can we give you a lot more money for another grant? Because you were a genius. I mean, this is all up and down the state. In my own little town of Wilmington, Delaware, they've got these traffic lights, the kind Eric Holder was just talking about, where people actually try to raise money from their traffic tickets and their parking tickets. That has a disproportionate effect on black people. Well, in Wilmington, Delaware, it turns out the people who were getting caught on these red light cameras, it was like almost everybody was black. I mean, the town's 65% black now, so it's not that much of a stretch, even if it's a little bit out of proportion. The local newspaper actually wrote an editorial, which I will never forget, where they identified the problem, which was racist cameras. How often when we talk about this whole business of violence and denial, how often does reality meet parody? How often does something that seems comical and parody turn out to be true? Now we've got a paper for a major chain, the Gannett, talking about racist traffic cameras. Everybody knows that black people and white people drive the same way. Everybody knows that. So that's the only thing left, is that the only reason they're getting tickets is because of these big bad white cops who are under pressure to, write tickets and prop up the city budget. Okay, whatever. And so when the Attorney General stands up there and says, oh yeah, we're not really down with that anymore, he doesn't have to write a memo to every cop in America. He doesn't have to write a memo to every mayor, or every chief of police, or every watch captain. When the Attorney General says that, nobody wants the Attorney General coming into your department writing a report on your cops saying you're a bunch of bad people because even after I told you to stop writing tickets to black people, you kept writing them. So that's what happened. This is what happened in this story in St. Louis. Cops just don't write tickets anymore in that part of town. What do you suppose happened?
In St. Louis, where the driving is so dangerous, school officials are afraid to let their students walk across the street.
In fact, 2 kids were struck by a hit-and-run driver just trying to get home yesterday. Fox 2's Andy Banker is here with some disturbing video of the blatant disregard for the children, the laws, everything in this neighborhood.
Kind of stunning to see this, guys. People just ignoring stop signs, speed limits, right next to a school and right in front of our camera. There seems to be no fear of getting a ticket. Residents say police could be out there riding them all day long.
I mean, it was just shoot across Euclid.
And this right in the school zone, right in front of the Northside Community Charter Elementary School. Police say 2 10-year-old children were struck by a hit-and-run driver getting off of their bus after school yesterday. They went to a hospital, though their injuries were not serious. They were not Northside Community School students, but school staffers helped them until EMS arrived.
They were just crossing the street. We picked up their shoes off the street, saw them too on the ground, and 2 beautiful kids.
Stella Arandu is the school's principal and founder. She says aside from a handful of students who live just a few houses away, none of the close to 400 students are allowed to walk home without their parents. Even crossing the street to get into their cars can be precarious. The school staff, parents, and neighbors say this situation is unacceptable. They're calling on police and city leaders to do something and reinforce those things we're all taught in school before there's an even greater tragedy.
And go by the rules and not do things that are wrong. And there are consequences for those things. And one of the consequences is not just what happens to you, it's what happens to the next person.
They should be able to cross the street. And even if a bus is out there and you see that stop sign, you know you're supposed to stop. Because those are kids.
Just like Wild Wild West, anybody can do whatever, drive whatever and however they want on these streets.
The 2 children are expected to be okay. Witnesses say that hit-and-run driver abandoned the car and ran off. Police say he remains at large tonight. They also say they are increasing enforcement in the area, but neighbors and school officials say they haven't seen it, and obviously there was none going on when our camera was out
Unbelievable.
That
They
is
didn't even slow down. Some of those cars you caught didn't even slow down for
there.
the
And it
stop
seems
sign.
like it's about 50-50. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, just boom, boom, boom.
Wow.
Like stop signs aren't even there.
That's a mess. All right, thanks, Andy.
And now we get the anchors, the same anchors who covered Ferguson, the same anchors who cover this stuff all the time, the same anchors who were there when Eric Holder made his triumphant announcement that he finally figured out that writing traffic tickets is the cause of all this racial unrest. And so cops stopped writing traffic ticket and kids start getting hit by cars and people just start blowing through stop signs. Obeying traffic laws like stop signs and street and red lights, especially stop signs, obeying them is a white thing. Blowing through a stop sign is not a white thing, that's a black thing. Oh, Colin, how can you generalize that? Because I live in Wilmington, Delaware, and I'm looking out my window every damn day right at a stop sign. Nobody stops for the stop sign. Nobody. And most of the people that drive up my street are black, period. Colin, that's anecdotal. Yeah, ask any cop about that. Ask any cop about these anecdotal stories. Ask a teacher about these anecdotal stories. Good Lord, I get so many letters from cops, so many letters from teachers. You want to know what cops are talking about today, anecdotally? It's on the Chicago Tribune. If the Chicago Tribune put stories if they place them in relationship to the amount of time people read them and talk about them, this would have been the biggest story of the day. As it wasn't that big of a story. It was just kind of buried a little bit. Something else, probably the fact that Trump was ruining the universe. That's probably, that's their main story on the front page. Anyway, so at the Chicago Tribune, big story, or buried story, there's a picture of 5 black people who are just walking around in the so-called loop, the so-called nice area. The nice area where this stuff doesn't happen. Well, this is what cops in Chicago are talking about today. 5 black people are walking around robbing people. And they've been doing it for a couple weeks. And they've got their pictures. It was just, 18 months ago, 15 months ago, when Kim Foxx was elected the state's attorney, Cook County in Chicago. She was elected with the full financial support of George Soros. And what that means is, that doesn't mean he gave her money directly. That means he set up political action committees and they paid for lots and lots of advertisements and lots of activities that were supposedly independent of her. So she was elected to let's just call her district attorney. And to her credit, she's been keeping her promise, because when she was elected, she told everybody during the campaign that she thought too many black people were in prison for no reason whatsoever and were criminalizing poverty. And why are we picking on black people so much? And we're not going to arrest our way out of this mess. And we all know crime is caused by all this bad stuff. So let's fix the bad stuff, because crime is not a cause, it's a symptom. True to her word. Carjackings. People were caught in carjackings. Every single one ends up not pleading to a felony, but to a misdemeanor. That means a year from now, when we look at the carjacking numbers in Chicago, Kim Foxx is going to be able to put her hands in the air standing next to Rahm Emanuel and go, look, we solved the carjacking problem. Look at the numbers. And meanwhile, we got a guy named Colin Flaherty who says we're cooking the books on the numbers. Isn't that silly when people talk like that? So Kim Foxx sent out this enormous signal that and with the full acquiescence of the mayor and the chief of police, even though the chief is kind of like off the reservation a little bit, sent out this enormous signal that we are not going to be holding black people accountable for their actions in the city of Chicago. Not unless it's videotaped and not unless there's a lot of blood around. But something like, what, just beating up a couple of rich white ladies? You think that's a problem in Chicago? Really? You think that's a problem? Nobody gives a damn if a bunch of black people walk around beating up rich white chicks in Chicago. Sorry to break the bad news to you. Because if they gave a damn, those guys would still be in jail. They wouldn't even be on the streets. They'd be in jail now. Because every time they catch somebody like that, they have a record from here to your street corner. All the same. Guns, drugs, money, bitches, violence, robbery.
Developing this morning, a warning for CTA riders. You really need to watch yourself while changing red and blue lines.
Fox 32's Tia Ewing live this morning with where crooks are targeting riders during the day. Tia. Well, Kristen and Natalie, we are in the 200 block of South Dearborn, right at the Monroe entrance, right here into the subway tunnels for the CTA. What I can tell you is that it happened right down these stairs. It was the evening of Valentine's Day. That's the last time one of these crimes took place. Let's show you this. Chicago police want you to be on high alert. These are surveillance images released of just 4 of the 5 men that police are looking for. And what is absolutely crazy about this, 2 of those robberies took place at the height of rush hour between 7 a.m. and 9:15 in the morning in the pedestrian tunnels between the CTA red and blue line trains. The men surround the victims while showing a handgun, hit and kick them, and then take off with their possessions. The first crime took place in the area of the 100 block of South State. Now, last week there was an incident on the 200 block of South State Street as well, and there was an incident right in the area that we are in right now. I met Diane this morning. She catches the blue line and says more police presence is needed.
Don't have no protection at all. No protection at all. Once in a while we say those canines, but it is about it.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And most passengers that I spoke with this morning, Diane being one of them, saying that their cell phones don't work when they're down there. So that's a problem. If they are surrounded, who to call for help? That's one of the issues. Chicago police, they are releasing some information on what you can do if you do find yourself in this situation. They say, first of all, always be aware of your surroundings. And secondly, to make sure that you don't lag behind and you try to stay with a group when you are down there. And if something does happen and you can come up, make sure as soon as you get on ground, like in this area, that you dial 911.
They bring them in, and now the same reaction they used to get from the public defenders, now they get from the prosecutors. It's like, oh man, why? I'm sorry, young man. Why did you feel the need to beat up those old white ladies, or why did you feel the need to beat up all those gay people in Boys Town, or why did you feel the need to beat up to attack all those people over near Wrigleyville in Chicago? Why did you feel the need to do that? You weren't feeling good that day? Okay. Would it be okay if we put you on probation? We'd rather you didn't do that. But I want you to know that while you are on probation, or while we let you out without bail, we want you to know that we're going to be doing our best to cure poverty and education, deficiencies in education and healthcare. I'm not kidding. This is what the district attorney of Chicago is saying now. And now, just the other day, we did a video of a cop, 61-year-old cop, well-respected, well-liked. He was helping some of his officers. He was on the scene of a crime, helping some of his officers. Black guy turns out, takes out a gun, shoots him dead, shoots him 7 times, and kills him. Here's the punchline. He's in the jail. He's in the Cook County Jail. He's walking past the holding cell, and a bunch of inmates, only the ones we saw, this happened in other parts of the jail too, inmates were cheering his arrival. They were cheering and clapping on video. So we're talking about consequences. So what are the consequences of this anti-cop, cops are racist mentality that is now firmly implanted in the DNA of the district attorney and in the DNA of the mayor of Chicago? What are the consequences of that? The consequences are everybody thinks crime is okay, or they won't get caught, or if they do get caught, nothing is really going to happen to them. And they're right. That's the way they're rolling in Chicago. My favorite Chicago headline over the last 6 months came a few months ago from the Chicago Tribune. Big headline. Chicago jail population at record low. Fewer than 6,000 people are in Chicago jails. It's never been that low before. It's because they're not charging people, and then when they do charge them, they let them go on bail. I guess Kim Foxx has never heard, and the mayor have never heard of a little thing called witness intimidation. Commit a crime and you're back on the street just in time to go to that person's house and say, you and your fellas, to say, if you do that, if you don't develop a case of amnesia real quick, you're going to develop a case of lead poisoning. Anybody who talks about the crime numbers in this country without talking about witness intimidation, stitches for snitches, Bronx juries, and breaking the cradle to prison pipeline is either a fool or they're being disingenuous. That's a polite way of saying they're lying their butts off. They're being disingenuous, and they're trying to disguise the true level of black criminality in this country. We just again, it's all about it's like consequences. Wow, we're arresting fewer people. Wow, we're putting fewer people in jail. Does that have any consequences? No, Colin, it's a good thing. What about those people that are running around beating up old white ladies in Chicago, in the rich part of Chicago? No, Colin, you can't prove that those two things have any relationship, Colin. Okay. All right. in New Jersey. When in the last, I think Chris Christie was in on this. They did this is like the thing. The first time I heard about this was 2 years ago. When you guys heard me say the word numbers, I'm actually imitating a friend of my brother's named Mark. And I saw Mark downtown Wilmington a couple of years ago, and he said, "Oh man, working on this and working on that." And one of the things he was working on was this whole idea of, we're going to save the jail system by just not not charging people bail anymore. Just going to you get arrested, you go in front of a judge, the judge looks at you, you put your right hand up and say, "Oh, Your Honor, I promise I'll come up here for trial." And you're gone. You're back out on the street to wreak some more havoc. I thought to myself, this is the first blush in all these crazy ideas, right? It's like, oh no, that idea is so crazy. It's too crazy. That will never get adopted. Of course, it's adopted in Chicago. Big story in the Philadelphia paper over the weekend about how it's adopted in New Jersey. And the story in New Jersey was like perfect when we talk about consequences, because it was all about, oh, this is fantastic. All over the state, judges are just letting people out on their own recognizance, no cash bail. And I kept going down and down and down. This guy said this great thing happened. This guy said that great thing happened. Everybody was like, I can't believe how great this is. But my whole thing, I just wanted to know one thing. The people who you let out on bail, are they A, showing up for court, and B, are they committing crimes while they're out on bail? Get about 90% of the way down of a pretty lengthy story, and it goes, oh yeah, we don't know the answer to either of those two questions. But other than that, we are really excited at how well this program is doing. It's amazing to me that there are people in this country, they have, they go to the finest schools, the finest colleges, the finest law schools. They score really well on their bar exams. They get these jobs here, there, and everywhere, and they're quite capable of saying some really ridiculous and stupid things that now are not just ridiculous and stupid, they're dangerous. I mean, the whole trick is, well, let's just not talk about consequences. I mean, to say that letting criminals out of jail and prison on a wholesale level is a good thing, I mean, how can you ignore consequences more than that? First of all, you're ignoring all the damage they did to the victims. Yeah, remember them? Victims. Ignore that. Ignore the consequences of that. And now you put all these criminals back on the street, and you don't even care whether they show up for trial. You don't even care while they're out on this experimental program. It's not experimental to you. It's like, no, this is like a proven success now. And you don't even care if you put these criminals back on the street, whether they're committing crime again. It doesn't have anything to do with anything. And then you look at us and say, well, Colin, you cannot prove anything you said. Come on, we don't. Oh, man. Do we really have to prove 2 + 2 is 4? Okay, watch me carefully. I got 2 fingers here, 2 fingers there. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4 fingers. Capiche? Well, Colin, we don't really know if we catch criminals and if we catch them listen, Colin, just because we catch somebody committing something 10 times, we don't have any proof that they're going to commit something on 11th time. No, everything you have is just speculation and conjecture. Well, this much isn't speculation or conjecture. When you let somebody out of jail and prison prematurely, when you give them the message that no matter what they do, they are going to be back on the streets, just like we used to see in those bad 70s TV shows where the cop arrests somebody and the guy looks the cop in the face and says, "Fuzz, I'll be back on the streets before you even, off duty tonight." I mean, didn't we think that was kind of like done with? No, it's back. And so here's what's not conjecture. The people doing all this damage, no, I'm talking about the people who actually let the criminals loose without bail. This isn't conjecture. We know they're not living in the hoods where these criminals are. We know they're not. We know their kids aren't going to school in those hoods. We know they're not going to church in those hoods. They're not going to get something to eat in those hoods. We know they're not picking up a basketball and driving down to that part of the world where the criminals are all walking around. By the way, it's amazing how many parks are kind of empty now. I mean, parks are just now recognized as a public space that is often unusable because of the amount of black crime and violence in a lot of parks. And so parks are no-go zones for people that live near the park with kids. It's like, no, you can't go there. No, stay on the porch. Stay in the backyard. No, you can't go to the park. Well, Colin, we can't arrest our way out of this mess. Well, you caused the mess in the first place by pretending it wasn't happening. Now, all of a sudden, we have a mess on our hands, and the only solution we have, which is to arrest our way out of this mess, you say, oh, no, we can't do that, Colin, because that would have too many consequences. Well, when did you discover the whole idea of consequences? Well, Colin, only kindness matters. Don't you listen to Jewel, Colin? Yeah, I listen to Jewel. Listen to the music, not the words. But unfortunately, I do listen to the words. When you listen to the words of that song, well, it just captures perfectly something that is very, very dangerous. I know, it's like, Jewel? Colin, are you saying Jewel is dangerous? Oh, absolutely. People who follow that philosophy are the most dangerous people on the planet. Only kindness matters, Colin. And sticking somebody in jail for bonking some old lady over the head and raping her, yeah, even though I just did the video on that today of two people that happened to, two old ladies that got raped by black people. Well, Colin, that's not very kind to stick those guys in jail, is it?
Cary police are looking for a man they say is armed and dangerous. Authorities have warrants out for 35-year-old Antoine Lamar Dennis. He's accused of breaking into a senior living home and sexually assaulting an older woman over the weekend. Gloria Rodriguez is live in Cary. Gloria, we never expect our loved ones in assisted living to be targeted like this.
Yes, it's just horrible, John. And Cary police say they are aggressively looking for the suspect. They say he may have a gun, and they're urging anybody who has seen him to contact authorities immediately. We have a picture of that man that police are looking for. He is Antoine Davis, and police say they found a surveillance image of Dennis at a nearby retail store. Cary police believe he broke into an elderly woman's home and raped her. Police say he also took off with cash. This happened after midnight Saturday at Woodland Terrace. That's a senior citizen community. The property manager says he's taking extra steps to secure the neighborhood, restricting entry to the building, changing access codes, and adding another security guard. And residents are reacting to what happened in their community.
I was surprised, very surprised.
Goodness, well, I'm going to lock my door for sure.
I think I will arm myself with some pepper spray, maybe.
You can imagine how scary this is for residents. Now, police want to remind everybody to always lock your doors, lock your windows. And of course, if you have seen that man, contact Cary police.
Yeah, you're right. It's probably not very kind. I don't even care. Because kindness might be the only thing that doesn't matter when we're talking about your personal safety and the safety of your family. And we're talking about how these reporters are completely misreporting the level, intensity, and pathology of black criminality and violence in this country. No, kindness doesn't have anything to do with anything. Consequences do. And so not one reporter in St. Louis could have figured it out when we stopped writing tickets that people are going to die because of that. Okay, instead of stop signs, why don't we just put a picture of Jewel on all the stop signs in St. Louis? Hey, if you get around to it, if you feel kind today, could you please stop for this stop sign? Oh, and if you can't, don't worry about it, because only kindness matters. We don't really care if kids get hit by cars or not, or if anybody else gets hit by a car. Because if you complain about that, well, that's not being very kind, is it? I mean, what about, why don't we, we could tell the exact same story down in Baltimore. Why don't we start with this? Why don't we just start with this story here and break it down? on the other side.
Several cars broken into and vandalized. Right now, a South Baltimore neighborhood is trying to figure out who is behind all of the damage. Police say tonight they need your help identifying the man caught on camera in one of those break-ins. WJZ is live tonight with the details. Amy Yancey has a closer look at the video and reaction from folks in that area. Amy.
And Jonathan, this is one of the cars that was targeted. As you can see, there are cracks in the window, in the glass, from when the suspect apparently tried to crack it and was unsuccessful. Fortunately for the woman who owns this car, I spoke to her. She says she's been living in this neighborhood for over 70 years and has never been as afraid as she is now. With a tool in his hand and surveillance cameras rolling, the unidentified man casually walks up to a vehicle and takes a swing, then a few more until the driver's window caves in and he can snake his way in.
What's the point of doing that? There's nothing in a car that's worth just destroying property.
WJZ obtaining these photos of another damaged car, one of several that were targeted this weekend. Police now investigating who's been destroying property in South Baltimore. The rash and vandalism hits eerily close to home for Melva Turner. Her Chrysler was hit Friday night.
At first I thought it was BBs, but I don't think so, because I had pulled it in this way and there was no way they could have shot it.
So take another look at the man walking away in the video. Investigators want to talk to him about the trail of destruction that's left some in this neighborhood rattled and afraid.
After it gets dark, I don't go out of the house, and neither is he. We're afraid. And I've lived in this neighborhood 71 years, and I never thought I'd see the day I'd be afraid to walk out my front door. Never.
And some of the neighbors that I spoke to say they specifically park their cars behind their houses and not on the street because they thought it would keep their property safe. Well, that has changed.
So this is a crime spree in Baltimore where people with hammers are smashing into cars, taking their stuff out of there. And then the other side of that, the reporters find people who are the victims and they go, wow, I can't really believe that happened here. They found the older lady that said, I've been living here for 71 years. I never thought I'd be worried about the day I couldn't walk outside of my own house. So this is Baltimore. Are you not reading your own newspapers? Are you not listening to your neighbors talking? Are you not watching people move out of your own neighborhood? Are you in total denial, deceit, and delusion about the level of violence in Baltimore? You didn't hear the conductor of the Baltimore Symphony when she was in Europe. They said, hey, what's up with Baltimore? She goes, well, I support black violence in Baltimore because that's the only way black people are going to be heard. You don't know anything about the black music, which glorifies violence against white people, which glorifies criminality, which glorifies murder. Oh, Colin, you're overstating it. You ever hear of Meek Mill? Meek Mill, we talked about this a little, but I still can't get over it. So Meek Mill is a huge rapper. By the way, I saw something the other day that said, well, rap is bigger than rock and roll. Rap's been bigger than rock and roll. Rap is enormous all over the planet. And Meek Mill, he's, when the Philadelphia Eagles come onto the field, they're coming on to the music of Meek Mill, one song in particular, Dreams and Nightmares, where Meek Mill talks about killing people. He talks about guns, drugs, money, bitches, and murder. And now if you're not down with murder, you're a pussy. I was eager to see that during the Super Bowl when the Eagles came out on the field. That's the reason I watched the beginning of it. As soon as that first eagle came out of that first tunnel and that song started playing, they cut away to a long shot with no audio of what was happening on the field. Surprise! And so now these people in Baltimore are going, wow, man, what's up with all this criminality and violence? I don't know why would anybody do that? I mean, how many signals do we get from Baltimore every day? How many signals do we get of black criminality? How many signals do we get from the public officials that they're not overly worried about it because it's not really, the criminality is not a symptom, it's not a cause, it's a symptom. How many? If you still live in Baltimore, it's only because you've made your deal with the devil. You in your own mind have agreed to ignore all this stuff. In your own mind, you've agreed to say, listen, we're all human beings here, and nobody's going to hurt me because I'm down with the cause, so the cause is going to be down with them. Yes, that's what people think. And now we get reporters putting microphone in people's faces and going, wow, aren't you kind of surprised that this has come into your neighborhood? Oh, yes, Colin, I'm absolutely surprised. Can't believe how somebody would do this in Baltimore. Good Lord, a town where the mayor gives people space to destroy, a town where 150 cops go to the hospital because of a black race riot? Does anybody even kind of doubt that was a black thing? Because black people don't doubt it. They're proud of it. It's not a riot. It was an uprising. It was an uprising to protest all the way the white people have been keeping Baltimore down for so long, even though black people have been running Baltimore for so long. Now we've got a new mayor in there. I mean, she'd been fired. She fired the chief of police. She didn't like the way he was doing his job. There's no difference in this mayor and the last mayor. There's no difference, this chief of police and the last chief of police. There's only one requirement to be the chief of police. Every time you see a bad thing happen, this is every city in the country. You stand up and pretend you're surprised at it. And you say, it's never going to happen again, not on my watch. And you know darn well it's going to happen within the next 12 hours. And when it happens again in 12 hours, you have to go in front of the cameras and tell people, not on my watch. And not one reporter, and one thing you know for sure, nobody's going to bust you on it. Nobody's going to say, hey, you just said that 12 hours ago and 24 hours ago, 36 hours ago. You said we were going to, start doing something. Nobody goes to the judges and say, yeah, why do you keep letting people out of prison? If they're accused of really violent, nasty business and they have a rap sheet a couple of feet long, why do you do that? I mean, we already know why they do that. They tell us why they do that. We're not listening. They tell us black criminality is caused by white racism and they're not going to be a part of we don't need to put another young black person in prison for no damn reason whatsoever. The central organizing feature of life in Baltimore is how can we ignore, deny, condone, excuse, encourage, and even lie about the level of black criminality? How can we pretend it's not happening? And when confronted with the fact that it is happening, how do we pretend that it's not a black thing? That's Baltimore. Just got a letter yesterday from, I get so many letters. Got a letter 2 days ago from a woman in Baltimore. She described her situation. It might have been the same neighborhood as this. She said she would move, but she can't because she doesn't have enough money to move. But she says her neighborhood is now one big hot chocolate mess and she can't move. She can't go out. She feels trapped in her own house. And still in Baltimore, they keep doing the same thing over and over and over. The racially conscious crime solutions that aren't solutions, they're just excuses. Total disregard of consequences. Constantly letting black people in Baltimore know that the only reason you're committing crime is because of the big bad white racists like Colin who are forcing you to do it. The state's attorney in Baltimore, Carolyn Mosley or Mosby? I forget. Mosby. It's our time. Remember she told that to all the young people in the streets. It's our time. Our time. What the hell does that mean? What did it mean? Other than, yeah, go out and burn whatever the hell you want to burn. Nobody's going to care. Because it's our time. We just did the story where the riots were held at a place called the Mondawmin Mall. That was kind of ground zero. Then they kind of spread out from there. So Target decided to close their store at the Mondawmin Mall. And they had the required community meeting with the required clueless public officials going, man, I can't figure out why Target's moving out of here. They're I mean, they've got to be making money in there. And not one reporter stood up and said, do you think it had anything to do with the riots? Do you think it had anything to do with the large level of black criminality inflicted on people going to the store, inflicted on people leaving the store in the parking lot, and the criminality in Target itself, in the shoplifting, in the assault on employees, and all that stuff? Do you think that had anything to do with it? Is that a fair question to ask? It's an obvious question to ask. But not one reporter wants to say, oh yeah, we had a major riot here. And there might have been consequences for that riot, which is nobody wants to live, nobody with any amount of sense wants to live in this town anymore. They don't want to do business here anymore. Big story in the Baltimore Business Journal a couple weeks ago. Again, it was kind of like they were a little bit surprised. The story was all these restaurants are for sale, nobody's buying. And the only place people are buying and selling restaurants is outside of the city. And all these business brokers are saying the same thing. It's like, nobody wants to buy a business in Baltimore anymore. Why is that? Just can't figure it out. And everybody, sort of they have a list of excuses, blah, 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 blah. This reason, that reason, this reason, that reason. And finally, at the end of the list, there's always somebody, at least in this article, comes out and says, well, maybe crime has something to do with it. I'm not really sure. I know it sounds like a crazy idea, but maybe there's something to do with it. Hey, why not just say it? Hey, I'm crazy like that. I mean, there are no consequences for sitting back and letting 100 and abandoning 150. They abandoned more than this. 150 cops got sent to the hospital. We've seen the videos of that many times here. They were abandoned. The cops are on their microphones going, hey man, we need some help down here. We need help right away. And there was no answer. They were surrounded. They were beat, rocks thrown at them, pulled out of their cars, hurt. And there's no consequences to that. People are not looking at that going, oh yeah, okay. We know in Baltimore, the central organizing feature of life in Baltimore is ignoring, denying, excusing, condoning, and even encouraging and even lying about black violence. Okay, I'm not going to make my life, I don't want to be part of that. I'm not going to devote my life to fighting that. I'm just going to get up and move out of Baltimore. And if I was thinking about going there in the first place, I'm not going there. And so at this point, the people in Baltimore, if they decide to ignore the consequences of this enormous level of criminality that they have allowed to exist in their city, at this point, they're not victims anymore. They become willing volunteers. And so I'm sorry for that lady and all those people that got their car broken into on video. But please don't come back at us and say you're surprised. Please don't come back to us and say that never happened to you. Please don't come back and say you've never heard this in 71 years in Baltimore, when for the last 71 years in Baltimore, you've been hearing nothing but that, but you keep ignoring it. You keep shushing it away. If you're at a family dinner and somebody says, yeah, I just got my car broken into third time this week, and I think it might have been the black people that, do this in our neighborhood all the time. You're the one going, oh no, we're not going to discuss that at our dinner table tonight. No. Can't we just leave politics at home tonight? And isn't it great how that black people celebrate Kwanzaa? If you go into a podcast like this or on a YouTube channel and you go, crime in Baltimore is a black thing. And lots of white people are victims of it as well. You're going to get some pushback going, hey, Colin, how could you say that? How could you ever say that, Colin? But here's when it goes from being just Colin saying it to everybody in Baltimore saying it. When it comes time to hand out federal money to solve the problem of black criminality, then it's like, oh yes, I need a whole bunch of money because crime in Baltimore is a black thing, and we have to offer some black solutions. That's why we're going to give the money to people like charities that have the word black in them, because we know we have to save the black kids. So you're going to give us a bunch of money, and we're going to go explain to the black kids very patiently. We're going to tell the parent first. We're going to tell the parents how to instruct the kids in the talk. Remember, cops are racist people, and if you walk out of your house in a black neighborhood and you see a cop, chances are he's looking to shoot someone just like you. So if you see a cop, especially a white cop, coming at you or riding up the street, make sure you go find the nearest gang member and ask him for help, because black people don't have anything to fear from other black people. Black children don't have anything to fear from other black people. I mean, that's really, all these stories in Hollywood, they call it the backstory, right? It's the story they tell each other that's the logical consequence and helps you build the big story, but you never really see the backstory. You just, everybody involved in it kind of knows. Like, for example, you see a character walk on the stage and in the actor's mind and in the director's mind and the writer's mind, that person has a very long and powerful and detailed backstory about where he grew up, where he went to college, what kind of mannerisms he had. Is he lower class, middle class, upper class? What kind of mom and dad he had. And all these things combine to create a character. Well, these programs have the same kind of backstory. And the news story, the programs and the news stories have different backstories, right? The news story is like, wow, we've never heard of anything like this before in Baltimore. No, we don't know what that whole crime. Is there crime in Baltimore? We have to check the numbers. Okay. Then finally, when the crime gets so right in everybody's face that even they can't have a hard time denying it, that's when it does become a black thing, when people stick their tin cups out and goes, yes, I'm with the Black Charities of Baltimore. Could you stick some coins in my cup so we can go solve the crime problem by reminding the parents and the children that black people are victims of white racism. That's why they're committing crime. Wow, that doesn't work, does it? Everything you're doing in Baltimore to solve crime, what if... Okay, I'm going to tell you the truth. Let's use a hypothetical. What if everything in Baltimore you're doing to solve crime makes it worse? What if? Why don't we remove the what if? Because that's the story of Baltimore. That's the story of Chicago. That's the story of a lot of places that are basically run by a one-party system dominated by black people who are convinced that the only reason black people commit crimes is white racism. That's what we saw in St. Louis and Ferguson. That's what we see in San Francisco. See that in Baltimore, Chicago. It's a long list. It's a long list of places, you hear about gun-free zones. These are consequence-free zones. And one thing about consequence-free zones that make, that's really a good thing that makes everybody really, really happy is that consequence-free zones never make the black kids angry.